Congratulations! You've reached the last chunk of the last course of this program. You are totally ready to lock down every single operation of your organization and make it airtight, right? Not quite. If you're responsible for an organization of users, there's a delicate balance between security and user productivity. We've seen this balance in action when we dove into the different security tools and systems together. Before you start to design a security architecture, you need to define exactly what you'd like it to accomplish. This will depend on what your company thinks is most important. It will probably have a way it wants different data to be handled and stored. You also need to know if your company has any legal requirements when it comes to security. If your company handles credit card payments, then you have to follow the PCI DSS, or Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, depending on local laws. We'll take a closer look at PCI DSS, which is a great example of clearly defined security goals. PCI DSS is broken into 6 broad objectives, each with some requirements. The first objective is to build and maintain a secure network and systems. This includes the requirements to install and maintain a firewall configuration to protect cardholder data, and to not use vendor-supplied defaults for system passwords and other security parameters. As you can tell, the requirements are related to the objective. The objective is the end goal, or what we'd like to achieve, and the requirements are the actions that can help achieve that goal. PCI DSS goes into more detailed actions for each requirement. It provides more specific guidance around what a firewall configuration should control. For example, a secure firewall configuration should restrict connections between untrusted networks and any systems in the cardholder data environment. That's a little generic, but it does give us some guidance on how to meet the requirements. The second objective category is to protect cardholder data. In this objective, the first requirement is to protect stored cardholder data. The second is to encrypt the transmission of cardholder data across open public networks. I want to call out again how the broad objective is to protect sensitive data that's stored in systems within our control. The requirements give us specific guidelines on how to get this done. The specifics of these requirements help clarify some of the points, like what constitutes an open network. They also recommend using strong cryptography and offer some examples. But not all requirements are technical in nature. Let's look at the requirement to protect stored cardholder data, for example. It has requirements for data retention policies to make sure that sensitive payment information isn't stored beyond the time it's required. Once payment is authorized, authentication data shouldn't be needed anymore, and it should be securely deleted. This highlights the fact that good security defenses aren't just technical in nature, they're also procedural and policy-based. The third objective is to maintain a vulnerability management program. The first requirement is to protect all systems against malware and regularly update antivirus software or programs. The second is to develop and maintain secure systems and applications. You'll find more detailed implementation procedures within these requirements. They'll cover things like ensuring all systems have antivirus software installed and making sure this software is kept up to date. They also require that scans are run regularly and logs are maintained. There are also requirements for ensuring systems and software are protected against known vulnerabilities by applying security patches at least 1 month from the release of a security patch. Use of third-party security vulnerability databases is also listed to help identify known vulnerabilities within managed systems. The fourth objective is to implement strong access control measures. This objective has 3 requirements. The first is to restrict access to cardholder data by business need to know. The second is to identify and authenticate access to system components. And the third is to restrict physical access to cardholder data. This highlights the importance of good access control measures, along with good data access policies. The first objective, restricting access to data by business need to know, means that any sensitive data should be directed to data access policies to make sure that customer data isn't misused. Part of this requirement is to enforce password authentication for system access and two-factor authentication for remote access. That's the minimum requirement. Another important piece highlighted by the PCI DSS requirements is access control for physical access. This is a critical security aspect to keep in mind, since we need to protect systems and data from both physical theft and virtual attacks. The fifth objective is to regularly monitor and test networks. The first requirement is to track and monitor all access to network resources and cardholder data. The second is to regularly test security systems and processes. The requirement for network monitoring and testing is another essential part of a good security plan. This refers to things like setting up and configuring intrusion detection systems and conducting vulnerability scans of the network, which we'll cover a bit more later. Testing defenses is another super important part of this. Just having the systems in place isn't enough. It's really helpful to test defense systems regularly to make sure that they provide the protection that you want. It also ensures that the alerting systems are functional. But don't worry, we'll dive deeper into this a little bit later when we cover penetration testing. The sixth and final objective is to maintain an information security policy. It only has one requirement: to maintain a policy that addresses information security for all personnel. This requirement addresses why we need to have well-established security policies. They help govern and regulate user behavior when it comes to information security aspects. It's important to call out that this requirement mentions that the policy should be for all personnel. The responsibility of information security isn't only on the security teams. Every member of an organization is responsible for information security. Well-designed security policies address the most common questions or use cases that users would have, based on the specific details of the organization. Everyone that uses systems on your organization's network is able to get around security. They might not mean to, but they can reduce the overall security with their actions and practices. That's why having well-thought-out security policies in place also need to be easy to find and easy to read. We'll cover more details about user education and getting users involved in the overall security plan in another upcoming video of this course.